Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our online engagement event for the Rosewood and Lakewood Suburban Center Neighborhood Traffic Review. My name is Natalie Bode, and I'm the Senior Transportation Engineer responsible for the Neighborhood Traffic portfolio. I'm joined tonight by Julian Petrus. He's the Project Manager for the Rosewood and Lakewood Suburban Center Neighborhood Traffic Review.
Hi, everyone.
And we're also joined by Marinelle Flores, another member of our team, and she'll be helping us behind the scenes tonight.
Hello.
We look forward to working with you to address the traffic issues in your neighborhood. Please note that our meeting tonight will be recorded and posted to the Engage page for the Rosewood and Lakewood Suburban Neighborhood Traffic Review, so that anybody who's unable to attend tonight can still watch the video and give us their feedback on the draft traffic plan. To ensure that our meeting runs smoothly tonight and that we minimize as many technical challenges as we can, I ask that you please type your comments in the question and answer box, and I'll read them out throughout the meeting. I did post a little message on there, so hopefully you can find that box. I apologize in advance if you experience any delays with your video stream. Sometimes the closed captioning seems to follow along a little bit better than the video if there are delays, so you may want to turn on that feature. If you're unable to type your comments in the question and answer box, or if you have any other type of technical difficulties during our meeting tonight, please reach out to us through one of our other engagement methods to submit your comments on the draft traffic plan. We have options for email, phone, an online survey, letters, and a report a traffic issue app. And we'll provide details on those a little bit later in the meeting. So we have a lot of information to get through tonight. So to facilitate some of that and minimize the amount of content for tonight's meeting, we did prepare a little video series about the Neighborhood Traffic Review Program, how we collect and analyze data, and various other topics or frequently asked questions that we get during these neighborhood traffic reviews. So I encourage you to watch that series if you'd like to know more, and it's available on the Project Engage page. So our focus for tonight's meeting is to hear from you and your neighbors on the draft traffic plan that we'll be discussing tonight. We have 5 of you attending live tonight so far. Hopefully a few others will join us as we progress through the meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce your council representative, Councillor Dubois. She is planning to join us later tonight, but unfortunately she had an emergency come up, so she will attend if she can a little bit later, but your councillor is Bev Dubois, and I hope she can make it. Often when we have these meetings, we're also joined by a member of the traffic unit of the Saskatoon Police Service so that they can answer any of your enforcement questions. Unfortunately, tonight, Staff Sergeant Trent Emig was unable to join us. But if you do have enforcement concerns, you can feel free to let us know about them and we'll pass them on to them. Or you can contact them directly, and I can post the traffic unit's phone number in the chat if you'd like. So the way the meeting will progress tonight is we'll begin with Julian's presentation, which has a bit of an overview about the neighborhood traffic review process and the changes proposed in the draft traffic plan, and then he'll cover next steps in the study. So usually when we have these meetings in person, we have a big map of your neighborhood and all of the recommendations, and we work together in smaller groups around a table. And we discuss comments one by one about each location and the recommendation there. So we're going to try to replicate that as much as we can in an online format. So after each recommendation that Julian describes, I'll be checking the question and answer forum to go over any questions or comments that you may have about those recommendations. So feel free to type your comments and questions as we move through the meeting rather than saving them for the end. Julian, I pass it over to you to begin your presentation.
Thanks, Natalie. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Julian Petrus. I'm the project manager for the Rosewood and Lakewood Suburban Center Neighborhood Traffic Review. Tonight, I'll be presenting some background information, the recommendations for the draft traffic plan, and gathering some of your feedback on the plan. On the screen, you should see a map of the Rosewood and Lakewood Suburban Center neighborhoods. The study area we've been looking at is bound by Boychuk Drive to the west, Taylor Street to the north, West Road and Zimmerman Road to the east, and Highway 16 to the south. The focus of the neighborhood traffic review is existing traffic concerns on the local and collector streets. Arterial streets such as Boychuk Drive and Taylor Street are outside of the scope of this project. This slide provides an overview of the neighborhood traffic review schedule. Last summer, we completed stage 1 and identified the traffic problems in your neighborhood. Based on the comments we received, we developed a data collection program and collected the data in the fall of 2020. This included traffic volume studies, speed studies, and field observations. We are now in stage 3, review and approval, where we will discuss the draft traffic plan with the neighborhood tonight. This is another opportunity for you to provide feedback. And I'll discuss the next steps in the schedule later this evening at the end of the presentation. I'll move on to a summary of the concerns we've heard so far. This slide shows a list of the locations where residents of the neighborhood have expressed concerns with pedestrian safety. We received requests for new pedestrian crossings, upgrades to existing pedestrian crossings, parking restrictions to increase the visibility of pedestrians, and more. There were concerns at locations along Rosewood Boulevard, Harold Road, Rosewood Drive, Slimman Road, Rosewood Gate, Wershner Street, and Olson Lane. This slide shows all the locations where we received feedback regarding speeding. There were concerns for many streets in the neighborhood, including Meadows Boulevard, Rosewood Gate, Slimman Road, Polachenko Lane, and Rosewood Drive, Taylor Street, and Boychuk Drive. I won't go through each of the individual locations, but if we're missing any, please let us know in the comments. We received feedback on a number of locations where there are concerns with traffic operations. This could be anything from concerns regarding the intersection traffic control, like a stop sign or a yield sign, poor visibility due to parked cars, or even people making U-turns on busy roads. We also heard other types of concerns that don't fall under any of the previous categories, such as road and sidewalk maintenance, winter road maintenance, and vehicle noise. Locations with these types of concerns were scattered throughout the neighborhood, and we also received some for arterial streets surrounding the neighborhood. After receiving all these concerns, we began collecting data to prepare for the draft traffic plan. I conducted field observations throughout the neighborhood at different times of day. Our staff completed 6 traffic volume and speed studies, as well as 9 intersection traffic and pedestrian volume studies. I also reviewed the previous 5 years of collision history in order to identify locations with high numbers of collisions. Based on the feedback we received and the data we collected, we generated a list of measures to address your concerns. Here's a summary of what we are proposing tonight. We'll go through each recommendation in detail in the following slides, but in general, some of the types of improvements we are recommending are parking restrictions, playground signs, pedestrian crosswalks, sidewalk ramps, curb extensions, median islands, signage improvements, and permanent traffic calming installations. As we go through each recommendation, please feel free to enter your comments and questions in the chat box. We'll check the chat box and read out any comments or questions after we're done discussing each recommendation. You can also like a comment to indicate you agree with it or support it. As Natalie said, we have quite a few recommendations to get through tonight. We'd like to make sure everyone has an opportunity to comment and share their concerns, so we're going to try to avoid any repetitive discussions. To ensure that we get through all of the recommendations, we may need to limit the discussion for each recommendation. But if we do have extra time at the end, we can always go back to any of the previous recommendations for any additional discussion. Now let's get into it. So our first recommendation is located at the intersection of Harold Road and Harold Terrace and Polachenko Lane, which is in the northwest corner of the neighborhoods. You can see the intersection circled in red on the map on your screen. This is the first intersection you cross after turning onto Harold Road from Taylor Street on your way into the Lakewood Suburban Center. At this location, we're recommending that we extend the existing parking restriction on the west side of Harold Road south of the intersection by 5 meters. Extending this parking restriction will ensure that parked vehicles are not blocking the visibility of pedestrians waiting to cross at the crosswalk. You can see the little red arrow on your screen kind of gives the rough extents of what that parking restriction would look like. So anything come in, Natalie?
Yeah, we do have a comment. It's not related directly to this recommendation, but the question is, do you have a way of extrapolating regular traffic flow based on measurements taken during COVID-19?
Yeah, so Throughout the COVID lockdown and pandemic, we've been keeping track of kind of our permanent traffic monitoring stations throughout the city and kind of comparing those volumes to our 2019 and kind of older normal volumes. So we do have a good idea of kind of how, in general, how much lower the traffic volume has been throughout the city. It kind of in the times when cases were lower, it was getting in the 10 to 15% range. And then when cases were really spiking, it was jumping up to kind of the 35% reduction range. So we've been keeping a close eye on it. And in any case where the traffic volumes were, close to triggering something, or maybe, if it had been a bit higher and it wasn't COVID, we were definitely taking that into account and erring on the side of caution in that case.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we didn't complete our data collection for the neighborhood until the fall, once school returned, and when the traffic volumes at our permanent counting stations were very close to what they had been before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So no other comments have come in about Harold Road and Harold Terrace, Palachenko Lane. So I think you can go on to the next recommendation.
All right. So if we continue south on Harold Road for another block or so, we come to the location for recommendation number 2, which is at the southern driveway access to the independent grocery store. So this is the driveway that enters the parking lot right beside the gas bar. So at this location, we are recommending 10-meter parking restrictions on either side of the driveway entrance on the west side of Harold Road. Again, the red arrows in the figure show the rough extents of these parking restrictions. We heard from residents that it can be difficult to turn onto Harold Road here if people are parked too close to the driveway. The recommended parking restrictions should make it easier to see oncoming traffic, even with the curves in the road kind of on either side of that driveway.
Nothing's come in yet. It takes a few minutes maybe to type it in, or maybe the people who are attending tonight aren't directly affected by this one.
We can always come back.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
All right. Our third recommendation is at the intersection of Slimman Road and Slimman Place in the Lakewood Suburban Center. This is the intersection directly across from Hyde Park and just east of the Dairy Queen and the RBC. So similar to the Harold Road and Harold Terrace intersection, we are recommending parking restrictions in advance of the crosswalks to ensure adequate visibility of pedestrians waiting to cross the roadway. We will be installing a new parking restriction on the north side of Slimman Road east of the intersection and extending the existing parking restrictions on the south side of Slimman Road east of the intersection and the north side of Slimman Road west of the intersection. That was a mouthful, but again, the picture on your screen, you can see the red arrows will represent the parking restrictions. And there is an existing parking restriction in kind of the southwest corner, but due to the driveway kind of a bit further to the west, we didn't need to extend that one anymore. I know we had a request for an all-way stop at this location. We heard about that we looked into it, but it didn't meet our requirements to change it from the stop control and Slimman Place to an all-way stop.
Yeah, no comments have come in about this one or the previous ones.
Okay, I guess we'll keep going. So recommendation number 4 is at the intersection of Taylor Street and Slimman Road. This is where you can cross Taylor Street to access the ball diamonds and sports fields at Donna Berkmeyer Park. We heard that the traffic increase on Taylor Street can make it difficult to cross the road as a pedestrian, but since Taylor Street is an arterial roadway, it falls outside of the scope of this NTR. That being said, we will plan on evaluating this intersection for pedestrian devices through a separate process.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we plan to do that this summer now that Taylor Street has been kind of extended all the way to Meadows Parkway. Yeah. Connection is open now, so we plan to investigate that this summer. No other comments have come in through the chat, Julian. Okay.
So the 5th recommendation is for a series of changes to the intersection of Rosewood Gate and Meadows Boulevard / Hastings Crescent. This is the first intersection you cross after turning south onto Rosewood Gate from Taylor Street. This was the intersection that we heard about most from the community during the engagement process last year. The main concern we heard was that it can be difficult to see northbound and southbound traffic traveling on Rosewood Gate when you're waiting to turn from one of the side streets. So in order to address this issue, we're planning on installing median islands on the east and west legs of the intersection. This will allow us to install a second set of stop signs and move all the stop signs forward into the intersection. Moving the stop line forward should give drivers better sight lines of oncoming traffic while waiting to turn onto Rosewood Gate. Moving the stop signs will put them in front of the crosswalks. So to make sure pedestrians know where to cross, we'll be painting the crosswalk lines on all 4 approaches to the intersection. And finally, we'll need to install parking restrictions on the north side of Hastings Crescent and the north and south sides of Meadows Boulevard to ensure that larger vehicles like school buses and fire trucks are able to navigate around the median islands.
We've had a comment come in on the chat, Julian.
Okay.
What is the timeline for these changes to be executed?
So it really depends on the change. Our goal is that we'll finalize the draft traffic plan and present it to the Standing Policy Committee on Transportation in the next month or 2. And then after that, once we get approval, we'll begin implementing basically as many of the changes as we can as soon as we can. So stuff like signs and pavement markings are fairly easy to do, and we'll be able to get those in the summer. We'll hopefully be able to get any sort of temporary traffic calming installations in as well. But the goal would be kind of during this next year, have these in.
Okay, thanks for explaining that, Julian. No other questions have come in yet.
All right. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we go back to that later, but
yeah,
for now.
Yeah, it might be hard to understand exactly what the change is going to look like there. So yeah, we might have to come back to that one.
So if we move east on Meadows Boulevard, our next set of recommendations is at the intersection of Meadows Boulevard and Pritchard Crescent. Pritchard Crescent intersects with Meadows Boulevard twice, so the one we're looking at is one that's further to the east, right beside Struthers Park. Right now, there's a yellow pedestrian warning sign for eastbound traffic approaching this intersection. We are recommending that we remove this warning sign and replace it with a standard pedestrian crosswalk with signs on either side of the roadway. We're also recommending parking restrictions on both sides of Meadows Boulevard to ensure visibility of pedestrians waiting to cross.
So we've had a question come in for the previous recommendation, Julian. I don't know if you want to go back now or wait till the end.
We can probably go back now.
Yeah, since it's fresh and close by. So yeah, the question.
Like the camera froze.
Oh, maybe it did. Yeah, it does look a little bit still.
Let me see if I can fix that. And what was the question?
The question is, would the stop occur in the crosswalks?
So it's a bit of a weird situation in this one. There's a similar situation on 17th Street, right, Natalie?
Yes, 17th Street West, west of Spadina, like between Spadina and Avenue P.
Yeah. So to answer the question, yes, the vehicle stopped at the stop line could potentially block the crosswalk. We're in a bit of a tough spot with this intersection. We've been trying to figure out the best way to improve it for everyone. And this is our idea that we've come up with right now. And we're here tonight to get your feedback on it. So in our mind, you know, the biggest problem we saw here was that it is very difficult to see the oncoming traffic. So people are having to creep up into the intersection anyways past that crosswalk. So if we can, you know, put those extra stop signs, put the median islands in, paint the crosswalk, just make sure everyone is approaching the intersection more cautiously and knowing that there might be pedestrians crossing, that's one of the best solutions we can kind of put in right now.
Okay, no other comments came in. So I think you can move on to the one after Struthers Park there.
Sure, so that will be number 7. So continuing along Meadows Boulevard to the east, we have our 7th recommendation as the roadway goes past Struthers Park. At this location, we are recommending the installation of 2 yellow playground warning signs. As shown in the figure, the first sign will be located on the south side of Meadows Boulevard and face eastbound traffic as they approach Struthers Park. The second sign will be on the opposite side of the park on the north side of Meadows Boulevard and face the westbound traffic. So in either direction as you're approaching the park, you'll see the yellow playground warning sign.
Okay, nothing in the chat so far.
So now we're going to jump over to the west side of Rosewood Gate for recommendation number 8, which is located at the intersection of Worshner Crescent and Worshner Lane. Again, Worshner Lane intersects Worshner Crescent at 2 different locations. So the one we're looking at is the one that's further to the east, kind of closer to Rosewood Gate and Worshner Street. So at this location right now, the yield sign is located on the north leg of the intersection. With this configuration, it can be unclear who has the right-of-way between eastbound and northbound traffic. So we are recommending moving the yield sign to the west leg of the intersection. So if you can imagine someone making that eastbound left turn and someone making a northbound through movement, they both wouldn't have the yield sign and going to the same place. So it's a bit unclear who has the right-of-way there. So if we move that yield sign, it would be clear that the northbound person has the right-of-way. Anything new come in?
Nothing new yet. Seems like they're either not affected by these or they agree with them so far. Or thinking about it still, typing away maybe.
Yeah, all right. So now we're going to do another little jump back over to Rosewood Gate at its intersection with Worshner Street for recommendation number 9. Worshner Street forms a gap between the linear parks to the east and west, and we heard that there's a lot of pedestrian demand kind of going along Worshner Street between the 2 parks. So in order to increase safety for pedestrians crossing Rosewood Gate, we are recommending the installation of a standard crosswalk on the south side of Worshner Street. As with the other crosswalks, we will also be implementing some short no parking zones to ensure visibility of pedestrians waiting to cross. We're also going to be correcting the street name signs to show Worshner Street instead of Worshner Crescent. I can see how that would be confusing if you live on that street. But I know here we took a look at the pedestrian volumes, and the south side of the intersection had quite a bit more pedestrian crossings than the north side. So that's kind of why we chose to put the crossing on the southern crosswalk.
Don't see anything in the chat right now.
Okay, so for recommendation number 10, it's located at the intersection of Rosewood Boulevard and Tweed Lane / Lendingham Way. This is the intersection at the edge of the commercial area near the Boychuk entrance to Rosewood. Tweed Lane is the roadway that kind of runs beside that 7-Eleven. So at this location, we are recommending a rectangular rapid flashing beacon crosswalk on the east leg of the intersection. This type of crosswalk includes push buttons that activate flashing lights on the crosswalk signs, as well as a painted zebra crosswalk on the roadway.
So there was a question come in about the Worshner Street crosswalk. They asked, can you also connect the linear park with a ramp, a pedestrian ramp, to the crosswalk? Right now, there's no drop-down curb. Okay,
that's good to know. I'll have to go take a look at that. Just to clarify, maybe if you can respond later, but that's on you're talking about the linear park on the east side of Rosewood Gate?
I suspect it's the east side because it looks like the sidewalk is separated from the curb there. So we might have to connect it with concrete and do the ped ramp down to connect the crosswalk. Yeah. That's what it looks like to me from the image anyways, but yeah, we can field check that and we can add that to the recommendation, Amber, for sure. Thanks for pointing that out.
So where are we now? Number 11?
I don't know. I didn't see any questions come in for Rosewood and
Tweed.
Tweed Lane, yeah, with the RRFB. I didn't see anything come in for that one.
Okay, we can always jump back to that one later. But if we kind of continue down Rosewood Boulevard to the east. Our next recommendation is at its intersection with Rosewood Drive and Lendingham Drive. So this is the intersection right at the entrance to Swick Park, just past that first kind of big curve on Rosewood Boulevard. So at this location, we currently have temporary curb extensions installed in the east and west corners of the intersection. Our before and after speed studies have shown that the 85th percentile speeds near the intersection have gone down since the installation of the curb extensions. So we are recommending that they be replaced with permanent concrete installations. So when I say 85th percentile speeds, what I'm referring to is the speed that 85% of drivers travel at or below. So this is an industry standard measurement that we use to gauge the speeds that most drivers feel comfortable traveling at. It gives us a good indication as to whether or not there's an issue with speeding at any given location. In this case, the 85th percentile speeds at this location before we installed the curb extensions was about 55.7 kilometers per hour, and now that we found after the installation, they've gone down to about 52.8. So our goal for any of this type of traffic calming is to reduce those 85th percentile speeds to within 5 kilometers of the posted speed limit. So at this location, we've accomplished that goal, so we want to turn that temporary installation into a permanent concrete one.
I'm not seeing any new comments yet.
Okay. So next, we will continue to move east along Rosewood Boulevard to the intersection with Lendingham Crescent and Gilly's Crescent. At this location, there's a bus stop on the north side of Rosewood Boulevard, just west of the intersection. So we're going to be recommending that the bus stop be moved about 5 meters further to the west, just to make sure that the bus isn't blocking the crosswalk while it's waiting to pick up or drop off passengers. We also heard that it could be difficult to see oncoming traffic when the bus is stopped there, so this should help with that as well.
No new comments came in yet.
Okay. So recommendation number 13 is again a bit further east on Rosewood Boulevard, this time at the intersection with Schumacher Bay and Gilly's Way. So this is the intersection just before you pass that undeveloped area right beside Bitts Park. There are a couple of existing crosswalks on this intersection on either side of Schumacher Bay, and then it connects up north, kind of closer to Hyde Park. So we're recommending curb extensions in the northwest and southeast corners of the intersection. We conducted a speed study just east of this intersection and found that the 85th percentile speeds were 56.2 kilometers per hour for westbound traffic and 52.2 kilometers per hour for eastbound traffic. So those curb extensions should help to reduce those traveling speeds. And a lot of times we see if there's kind of an undeveloped area or an area where the road kind of opens up, people feel a lot more comfortable speeding up. So that might explain those higher westbound speeds here. So hopefully the curb extensions will kind of get people to slow down a bit as they approach the intersection.
So we had a comment come in about the bus stop relocation, or number 12 recommendation. They said what they had requested was to have it moved to the east side rather than further west.
Okay. I'll have to look at it again, but I recall that there was quite a bit of room for us to move it to the west and kind of get it out of the way. And I know the buses prefer to stop kind of past the intersections. Isn't that right, Natalie?
Yeah, they tend to prefer it's called a far side stop rather than a near side stop. That's something we'd have to run by our peers at Saskatoon Transit before we can change the recommendation. But we can make that inquiry.
Yeah, and I'll have to take a look at that again.
Yeah, exactly, to see what's happening there. Yeah.
Okay. What number were we on? 15, right?
I don't think we made it up to 15 yet, did we? Oh, 14? Yes, 15. Yeah.
Oh no, we're on 14.
14, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So moving east from Schumacher Bay, we have a recommendation for the next intersection on Rosewood Boulevard at Olsen Lane. So there's a connection to Bitts Park on the north side of this intersection, and Olsen Lane is the roadway that leads directly to the Rosewood schools. So there's an existing curb extension on the north side of the intersection, as well as zebra crosswalks on both sides of Olsen Lane. We are recommending median islands on the east and west legs to help reduce the speeds of vehicles traveling on Rosewood Boulevard. And with the installation of these median islands, there'll also be additional signage. People will have to slow down and kind of be more aware of the crosswalk and the intersection that they're going through. I know we heard some concerns with pedestrian safety here, so this will hopefully help drivers be more aware of the pedestrians waiting to cross here.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, Julian, that we have quite a few new people who have joined the meeting. So I just wanted to make them aware that if you've missed anything at the beginning, if we have time at the end, we can go back, or the video will be recorded and posted to the Project Engage page, so you can always watch the recording to catch anything that you've missed. And there is a question that's come in for this location. So Andrea asks, there are so many kids crossing in busy morning traffic trying to sneak around waiting cars for turning. They want a controlled crosswalk for the kids going to and from schools. A flashing light would help.
All right, so for different types of upgraded pedestrian crossing devices in the city, we kind of follow the Transportation Association of Canada guidelines, and some of the things we look at are how wide is the crossing distance, how many lanes do pedestrians have to cross, what is the pedestrian demand, how many people are crossing, and also, what is the traffic volume on the street in terms of vehicles kind of going through the intersection. So in this case, we did look at whether or not an upgraded pedestrian crossing device was required. But right now, kind of what we have there with the curb extensions and the zebra crosswalks is kind of what we would recommend, and what would be consistent with what we'd applied kind of throughout the city at different similar locations.
Yeah, so I just went back to the chat and there was quite a few flashing lights there. So
all right.
I don't know if that was before your explanation or not. But one other thing I wanted to point out is that the traffic patterns around the school, not so much the pedestrian traffic, we're always going to see pedestrians crossing here and kids trying to get to the schools, but in terms of cars sneaking around each other to make the turns, the street network isn't fully built around the school on the south side. So we can come back and reassess this location for a pedestrian device once that connection is made. Mm-hmm. I think you had those streets kind of highlighted, Julian, right? The ones that needed to be connected still?
I'm not sure if I highlight them, but there's kind of the east connection to Rosewood Boulevard, kind of from that roundabout near the schools. And then if you go south to the roundabout, I think that eventually will connect to the future Rosewood Drive. I'd have to double check that, but like with the neighborhood still building out, there will be more ways to access the school in the future. So those traffic problems there might change. So we do kind of want to wait till we see those final traffic patterns.
Yeah, so someone's asking, there's enough traffic at Rosewood and Tweed Lane, Lendingham for flashing lights, but not at this location. Mm-hmm.
And yes, like right at the entrance to Rosewood, kind of everyone is kind of funneling through that one intersection. And then as they get into Rosewood, they kind of branch out to the various different paths into Rosewood or the different residential streets. So we do see kind of a heavy, sharp drop off of traffic volumes kind of as you get further into Rosewood. So that first one right at Tweed Lane, one of the things there is that there's, I think, 2 through lanes in each direction on the west side, then also a turning lane. So it's we wanted to move it over to the east side where it's narrower, but it kind of has those risk factors that we're looking at, pedestrian demand, high traffic volumes, wider roadway. That kind of differentiates it from Olsen Lane.
And somebody's asking about how is it different than the end of Preston Avenue before going into Stonebridge? They have a activated crosswalk. So I'm not sure if they're thinking of Preston and East Drive that we just installed. Was that 2 years ago maybe now? not sure if that's the one they're talking about, but.
Preston.
Yeah, so Preston and East Drive, we did assess that using the Transportation Association of Canada guideline that Julian mentioned, and it did warrant a device. So we consider traffic volume, the crossing distance as well, and there's quite a few different factors as part of the assessment. So although this one wasn't warranted at this time, it's something we can look at, like I mentioned, particularly when the street network is complete to the end. Somebody asked, did you look at speeds at this intersection? Oh.
And that's for Olsen Lane and Rosewood Boulevard?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, it came in since on this one when we were discussing this one. Yeah.
So yes, we did look at speeds. We did a speed study just west of that intersection, and we found that the vehicles were traveling kind of more than 5 kilometers per hour above the posted speed limit, or the 85th percentile speeds were. So that's why we're recommending those median islands. So there's going to be a curb extension and the 2 median islands on either side. So it'll be a fairly narrow intersection to traverse as a vehicle. So you should kind of feel like you do need to slow down as you go through it in the future once we get them installed. So that's kind of how we're hoping to address that speeding concern that we've seen.
Yeah, and just a couple more comments came in about the pedestrian activated device. So a couple people are suggesting it should be elevated because of the school and the linear park access and the curve nearby.
Mm-hmm. And yes, things like curves affecting the sight distance is kind of a extenuating circumstance, or not extenuating, but something we do take into account. But again, like Natalie was saying, like we really do want to see the final traffic patterns in the neighborhood before proceeding with something like that, since it doesn't right now meet those TAC guidelines that we follow throughout the city.
And we also had another comment come in about the bus stop location for recommendation number 12. So the point of moving the bus to the east side is actually to restrict parking on the east side, it sounds like, because there's sightline obstructions on the east side. So moving the bus stop would remove constant truck parking, which contributes to reduced visibility if you're turning off Lendingham Crescent.
Okay.
That just gives you more background when you're doing your visit.
More things to take into account when I get out there again. I'll have to go take a look. If there's a particular time of day you've noticed it more, certainly let me know and I can try to make it out there then. Yeah,
because even if the bus stop isn't relocated, we can consider parking restrictions to improve sightlines.
Mm-hmm.
So. And another comment came in for recommendation number 14. Median islands aren't as effective in the winter due to snow cover. We request an elevated visual cue.
Okay. You know, we've as we've seen in at Rosewood Boulevard and Rosewood Drive, we did have those curb extensions. It's a similar to the temporary things are still made from those black rubber curbs. And we did see that those were effective at reducing traffic volumes or traffic speeds just a few blocks to the west. So I'm hoping that we would be able to see similar results here. And again, this is just something that, you know, we're gonna try it. We're gonna see if it works. If it doesn't work in that evaluation period, we'll take a look to see if volume traffic speeds have actually gone down. And if they haven't, then we can certainly consider other options.
Yeah, and we do compile all of the comments, so we'll make a note of this. So when we go through our small group discussions, like we usually ask, do you agree with the recommendation or not? And I think it's pretty clear from the amount of comments we're getting from this group that you don't agree with this recommendation. You would like to see a pedestrian actuated device that's overhead is what I'm hearing. So we will make note of that in our report and consider it when we develop the final traffic plan.
It's good to see so much feedback.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to tell when we can't see your faces what you're thinking, so we really appreciate you taking the time to type them in. I know it's not as easy as just mentioning it to someone at a table, but
yeah.
Another comment has come in that the rubber curbs have been replaced 3 times, and my neighbor has lost 2 fences as a result of slipping in the winter and people plowing over. So I'm not sure if this is at the Swick Park location where there are currently temporary curbs.
But yeah, we do know with the temporary ones, they can get kind of plowed over and moved in the winter. We don't want to put in the permanent concrete installation right away and then find out that it doesn't work. So it's kind of our, we want to try it, we want to see if it works. There are some downsides to it, but if we see those speed reductions, then we can kind of put in the permanent concrete versions that won't get destroyed in the winter, won't end up hurting fences, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the plowing fences comment exactly. Yeah, I don't know if curb extensions will correct that, but hopefully the reduced speeds help that situation.
Right. Anything else or any other comments?
Nothing new quite yet. And I just want to make sure we get through everything. We're getting through it quicker than I thought. Some of the recommendations were pretty quick to get through. So.
All right. Now, where did we actually leave off?
We were on recommendation 14, so this is the next one. Yep. Okay,
15. So our next recommendation is just west of Colette Begonia School on Olsen Lane. So there's the pathway connecting McKay Park and Glen H. Penner Park on either side of Olsen Lane. We received a request for a mid-block pedestrian crossing to provide a safe crossing location between these 2 pathways. So we're recommending zebra crosswalk, signage, sidewalk ramps, and parking restrictions between the 2 pathways. So the zebra crosswalk is the one with kind of the big, wide, painted white lines of the road to make it even more obvious that there's a pedestrian crossing there. Anything new?
Nothing in the chat quite yet.
Okay. So moving just a bit further down Olsen Lane, our next recommendation is at the intersection with Flynn Manor. This is the intersection directly across from the main entrance to Colette Begonia School. Here we're recommending the installation of a no parking sign on the east side of Flynn Manor, just to reinforce the bylaw that states that parking is restricted within 10 meters of an intersection. We heard from a few people that during peak times, people were parking too close to the intersection. And then I kind of got a hold of our colleagues at Parking Services, and they verified that they've received a good number of complaints about this location. So we do want to just put in some extra signage to make sure people know they shouldn't be parking so close to the intersection.
Nothing new in the chat yet.
Okay, so going west on Gilly's Lane, just kind of off of Olsen Lane, we eventually get to Gilly's Bay, which is recommendation number 17. So here we are recommending the construction of an island in the middle of the bay. We heard from residents that they were being ticketed for parking in the middle of the bay, and constructing an island should give them a legal location to park. We did kind of some rough drawings, rough estimates. We should be able to fit about 8 parking slots around the island and still allow for 2-way traffic in the bay. So there should be, a good amount of parking and no more tickets for the people currently parking there.
Nothing in the chat yet for that one.
All right. And last but not least, our final recommendation is for Pickler Cove in the southwest corner of Rosewood. This is the cul-de-sac that's located just off of Pickler Crescent. So residents on Pickler Cove noted that drivers were frequently mistaking the cul-de-sac for a through road, So we're just going to recommend the installation of a cul-de-sac sign to provide more clarity to drivers, and they're not turning in and mistaking kind of that bend in the road for a through roadway. And I believe there's a nice street light kind of right near the intersection that we can stick that sign on.
Okay, we have a comment coming in, and I'm not sure if it's for Pickler Cove or for Gilly's Bay, but they say yes, thanks, ETA. So, I guess you hit the mark with that one. I'm guessing it's Gilly's Bay because they were pretty adamant about that at the first meeting, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's I don't think we've done many or Bay Islands through these NTR processes, so I'm not totally sure on the ETA on that one, but it sounds like there's an appetite for it, so we'll try to get that going for you guys. And then I guess the next thing is just, are there any other concerns that we haven't discussed yet, or were there any comments on other recommendations that we need to go back to? I know we might have some new people, so if there's a particular recommendation number you saw in those flyers we sent out that you might have missed, let us know and we can jump back to that. Maybe we'll just give it a minute or so here if anyone has any questions or comments.
There was one of the people came late, did ask the question about the recommendations. Like, are there any recommendations to decrease the speed limit on Rosewood Boulevard? Okay. So I responded in my comment that wasn't to decrease the speed limit, but we do have curb extension and median islands recommended, but I don't know if you want to talk about the speed limit review.
I don't know. Do you want to talk about the speed limit review? That's kind of your project.
Yeah, I guess I can discuss the speed limit review. So council did ask us to assess how we establish speed limits in our residential neighborhoods and on streets with residences on them. So we're currently doing engagement just to assess community interest in doing a speed limit at this point. And we're going to be summarizing that and presenting an information report and public feedback report to Standing Policy Committee on Transportation and City Council. And then we'll be presenting a decision report a little bit later. So we wanted to give them some time to digest everything that we're preparing for them. So the technical information will include some research, collision data, speed data from a lot of the neighborhood traffic reviews that we've found. And then we'll have that public feedback from the online survey. And I don't know if everyone has heard of the speed limit review survey, but I can post the engage page for that project. The survey is open until 5 p.m. tomorrow. Just so that we have time to compile all of the information in time for the committee and council report. So I will post that in the chat so you can access the link. And if you are interested in changing the posted speed limits, we have questions about that. Some of the other things that the speed limit review is considering is changes to school zones. So one of them is potentially removing school zones from arterial streets, or removing school zones from high schools, or changing the hours of school zones. We're also investigating whether we should reduce speeds around playgrounds that are separate from schools, and around areas where there's a high number of senior citizens living. So those are all different kinds of questions we have in the survey. So we'd love to hear your feedback and summarize that for committee and council to consider. I don't envy them their decision. There's been a lot of discussion about that item, and seems to be pretty controversial for our community. So. Yeah, so sorry, I'm just responding, checking the chat again, and somebody did ask about their question about the speed limit again on Rosewood Boulevard. So we don't, like I said, we don't have a decision as yet. We're just preparing that information report and public feedback summary at this time. So we won't know about a decision on that until probably the fall before council makes the decision. And then there's a couple more questions that came in.
Okay.
So number 16, recommend picture for number 16.
Okay, that's the parking restriction at Flynn Manor.
Yeah, so they say your picture for number 16 made me think about parking in front of the school. Can that stretch across from the school be marked to prevent all-day parking so that it can be used for school drop-off or pickup?
I'll have to double check, but I believe there's a bus drop-off zone or some kind of pickup and drop-off zone on the north side of the street there.
Yeah,
are they maybe talking about further to the west?
I think they're talking about the side of the street across from the school, not the school side.
Across from the school.
Yeah, I think that's what they're referring to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say we work with the school divisions directly on signage needed for schools, and it usually only applies to the school frontage and flankage, not across the street. So somebody says daycare staff park there all day. Yeah, so we can't necessarily prevent daycare staff from parking there because it's public parking. It's street parking is allowable for anyone to park there, but we can advise the school and they can maybe suggest that the daycare staff park elsewhere. Okay. I'm not sure which one to go to next. Okay, I think you've done a pretty good job in hearing others' comments. I think a general rethink on number 14 needs to be done. There are minimum acceptable enforceable standards, and then there's what is prudent. If we can put in an island for an isolated bay, we can add proper signage for children crossing. So that's, yes, yeah, oh, thanks for bringing that up, Marineal. Yeah, so that's the Rosewood Boulevard and Olsen Lane comment. And someone had another concern. Is there anything to help people leaving Tweed Lane in high traffic times? I don't remember that recommendation number, Marineal. It's back a couple.
Let's see here. That one is number 10. So this location, we did, hear about those difficulties turning during the peak times. We checked to see if the all-way stop would be warranted here. We checked to see if we could put in traffic signals. But again, we kind of have a consistent standard that we apply across the city. For an all-way stop, we really need to see kind of a higher percentage or comparison of traffic on the side streets. So there's not enough traffic on Lendingham Way, sorry, and Tweed Lane kind of compared to Rosewood Drive for all-way stop. And then kind of similar to our pedestrian crossings, we also use the Transportation Association of Canada guidelines for traffic signals. And in this case, it didn't meet those requirements either. I know I went out there in a few mornings just to kind of watch traffic and take a look at kind of all the traffic in that area and people getting on Rosewood Drive and getting through Boychuk Drive. And I did see how it can back up. It can be difficult, but it did seem like most people who were waiting could kind of get through in one cycle of the signals, or kind of the worst I saw was 2, but I'm sure there's some days of the year that are worse than that. But right now we don't have any recommendations for any changes there with regards to the kind of traffic operations. But glad you brought it up.
Yeah, so there's a couple more. So one related to the Gilly's Bay recommendation. I think that was 17, Mary. For Gilly's Bay, I hope that it's not all concrete inland and potentially a tree in there or grass. It's already all concrete around us. So yeah. Yeah,
and kind of like I said, I don't think we've kind of had this situation come up before, so we don't really have we won't know for sure if it's going to be concrete island, but it would probably be cheaper not to do it as a fully concrete island. So it's definitely something we'll look into and consider.
Yeah, it is nice to have trees and grasses in the median islands. They're not always maintained the way we like. We've heard from neighborhoods that do have grass and trees in the islands that sometimes it becomes a maintenance concern. So yeah, like Jillian said, we haven't done many of these before, or any, I don't think, through the neighborhood traffic review. So it might be softscaping, like you suggest, some type of landscaping, or it might be hardscaping where it's maybe more like a paving stone or something. We're not sure yet.
But certainly the more feedback we get, the more we can forward on and take into consideration when we make those decisions.
Yeah. So another comment, there's constant speeding on Rosewood Gate North, including a lot of construction vehicles traveling.
I know we did a speed study on Rosewood Gate. I think it was between Meadows Boulevard and Wershner Street, and we found, let me just see if I can bring it up. So we found that our 85th percentile speeds were kind of in the 52 kilometers per hour to 53 kilometers per hour range. So really our kind of threshold for when we'd want to put in some sort of traffic calming is when it's more than 5 kilometers per hour or more over the speed limit. So right now it kind of seems to be, the majority of people are driving the speed limit, or maybe just a few kilometers per hour above the speed limit. There's always going to be some people who are traveling well above the speed limit and kind of excessive speeding, but it's difficult to design and accommodate, there's always going to be someone speeding no matter what we do. So we try to at least cover, 85% of all drivers.
Yeah, and I'll just make a note there that that's part of why the residential speed limit review came to be. Councillors were hearing a lot about concerns with speeding, but our data wasn't verifying consistent speeding as an issue. So they were wondering if maybe the posted speed limit is what's making people uncomfortable. So sometimes, if you're traveling 50 in a car, it feels very comfortable, but if you're a pedestrian on the sidewalk with a big truck passing by you, 50 can seem very fast, even if it's complying with the speed limit. So a few more came in. Is there any possibility to put speed bumps on selected areas along Rosewood Boulevard?
So for speed bumps, it's definitely something we have in our toolbox that we've used in the past. But in general, we really do want to avoid putting them on the kind of those major collector or arterial roads within neighborhoods. It can impact things like the buses going over them, EMS, fire, kind of all those different larger vehicles can have trouble with the speed bumps and can impact emergency response times. So if at all possible, we want to first try things like the curb extensions, the median islands, speed display boards, that sort of thing, before we go to some sort of vertical deflection that can have those negative aspects to it. So we're recommending a few curb extensions and median islands to help reduce those speeds on Rosewood Boulevard. And then after a year or so, we'll do an evaluation to see if they've worked or not worked. And if they haven't worked, then we can start considering other options.
Yeah, and based on the Swick Park location that you mentioned, we've already seen some success with the horizontal type of devices on Rosewood Boulevard. So we're hoping for the same type of success with the new additions that we'll be making. So one question came in for number 10.
Okay.
Perhaps some better lighting overall. At night, it's extremely hard to see pedestrians waiting to cross while still on the sidewalks.
Okay, that's some good feedback. I don't think we'd heard that from anyone, so that's good to know. I know for one of the other locations, we had asked our colleagues at Saskatoon Light and Power to take a look at the street lighting to see if it kind of met their standards. So that's potentially something we could do again here. And if there isn't enough lighting, we've certainly worked with them in the past to improve it.
And somebody just wanted to clarify for Rosewood Gate North, which streets did you do the speed study between?
It would be Meadows Boulevard / Hastings Crescent, so that first intersection south of Taylor Street, and then between there and Wershner Street, which is the next intersection to the south. So kind of that middle chunk of Rosewood Gate. So if there's speeding concerns either to the north or south of there, let us know.
Okay, and one other question. Who should we contact about the general state of disrepair on the softscaping of all bus stops? Lack of grass cover, unleveled, unfinished medians, and so-called grass sides near sidewalks. Significant drop-off for so-called finished positions, and it often leads people to temp park in weird and wonderful places along Rosewood Boulevard to avoid them.
I'm not sure, Natalie.
Is it? Yeah, I'm just, it's around the bus stops in particular. So we can pass some of that on to our transit team. I'm not sure if it's because there's a lack of shelter that like people are just wearing out the grass by where they're standing on for the stop. It sounds like this concern is related to the transit stops. So we'll pass that on to our colleagues at Saskatoon Transit. And if you have very specific locations of concern, please detail those and send them on to us so that they can make sure they take a closer look at them. And then there's a question on Olson Lane, or a comment on Olson Lane between Gilly's and the school, adding proper curbs that actually meet up between parks, park paths east and west are key. Thanks for looking into that. So that was one of those earlier recommendations there for that linear park connection.
Okay, and yes, so we are going to be putting in pedestrian ramps there so that people can, take strollers and other kind of wheel things up and down the curbs without having to kind of do that jarring fall off the sharp curve.
Yeah. And another question or comment came in. How can we add more trees around the road on Rosewood Boulevard West? It's so bare. Between Olson Lane and Rosewood Drive, the city should plant more trees. So we can pass that on to our urban forestry team. I know they are, they do actively plant trees and they try to increase our urban forest. I don't know in new developments like this how much the developer is responsible for putting in before urban forestry steps in. So we'll have to make some inquiries about that. Another question, is there alternative roads leading to the eastern part of Rosewood to decrease traffic numbers on Rosewood Boulevard West?
So yes, as the neighborhood develops, there are going to be kind of more connections. I believe Rosewood Drive is going to be one of the larger roads, kind of the southern half of the neighborhood that kind of connects through. Yeah, it's really one of those things where as the neighborhood develops, the traffic patterns are going to change. Like just last fall, they completed the connection between Taylor Street and Meadows Parkway, and we've already heard from some people that the traffic volumes on Meadows Boulevard have gone down because previously some of the construction traffic was using Meadows Boulevard because Taylor Street wasn't open yet. So yes, as the neighborhood develops, there are going to be more connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people have asked about that connection to out to Zimmerman as well. So we don't have a timeline for that. That's all part of the progression of the development as it moves further east. So another comments come in. More homes are being built off of Rosewood Drive and the traffic is increasing on the street. More vehicles needing to turn onto Rosewood Boulevard and things can get backed up at times. So that's just a general comment. And then they also have a question. Any plans for crosswalks from Swick Park to Pickler Crescent? or from Swick Park and Lettingham Drive.
So that would be crosswalks across Rosewood Drive, if I understand that correctly.
I'm not sure if it's across Rosewood Drive or Rosewood Boulevard. Sorry, I don't know if you can zoom in, Marineal, some more. I know I can't quite see. That's so small on my screen. I don't know, maybe it's better if you're...
So I guess the answer is it's kind of similar to the last one. You know, we are still waiting for those traffic patterns to kind of normalize with the connections of those roads to the rest of Rosewood. I know we had a few requests for crosswalks on Rosewood Drive, but you know, right now they don't meet some of our requirements for pedestrian crossings. But as those connections are made and more people are using those roadways, then we can come back and reevaluate and see if there's anything we need to put in.
Yeah, and we'll try to take a look at the specific locations you're talking about when we've got a better map. We'll kind of try to look at that as we develop the final traffic plan, I guess. If you can clarify, I'm not sure, I think that one was anonymous, but if you can clarify the exact crossing locations you're looking at, then we can make sure we've assessed them. Another comment came in about the Taylor Street connection to West Road. So they know it's outside of the NTR scope, but they're wondering if there's consideration for the temporary traffic signs on who needs to yield is marked poorly, and no one seems to understand what to do, who should go or who shouldn't go. Everyone goes and no one yields, and the street is very narrow at the curve. So I'm not sure if that's right at West Road. I think that is right at West Road. So West Road is going to be closed south of Taylor Street permanently. So we've treated it kind of like a curve at that intersection, I believe. And eventually West Road will actually close at 8th Street as well, once the rail crossing is built at 8th Street. So eventually this intersection will change quite a bit.
But we could probably go out and take a look at kind of the temporary signage and see if there's anything we need to clarify.
Yeah. A couple more questions came in. Thanks everybody for typing in. You guys are quick. Is there anyone that we can comment to about the general road quality on Rosewood Gate North as far as patchwork that has been done in previous years? It's now beginning to sag again with all the construction, heavy equipment traveling on it.
So we have a asset preservation group that handles a lot of our road maintenance, but with Rosewood, it's not my area of expertise. I'm not sure how it works with the developer agreements and who's responsible for road work, but we can certainly pass on those comments to asset preservation, and they'll know kind of whose responsibility that is and can either deal with it or forward it along.
Yeah, that's one of those tricky ones with the developer does maintenance for so long and then it changes hands over to us to do the maintenance. So we just kind of have to verify who's responsible for it. And we can pass those comments along. I'm not sure what will be done with them, but if you don't hear back, you can always just message the General Customer Service Center at the City of Saskatoon, and they should be able to get an answer for you. So the comments about the crossings by Swick Park, they responded and clarified. Yeah, so it's over Rosewood Drive. Julian, you were right to Pickler. So, yeah.
So yeah, that's just, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
So yeah, that's just going to be one of those things that we're going to have to kind of look at as those road connections are made, to see kind of when those devices are kind of meet the criteria and we can put them in. But yeah, Rosewood Drive is going to be one of those larger connections. So at some point in the future, I would say it's a safe bet that we'll be putting in some sort of crossings there.
Yeah. And then Swick Park to Lettingham Drive over Rosewood Boulevard. Yeah, so there was a couple crosswalk connections that they were asking about. Yeah.
Lettingham Drive.
I think that's where we currently have those curb extensions, right?
Yes, that's where the curb extensions are. And I believe there are some painted crosswalks there.
Yes.
They might not be painted very well anymore, but you know, that the snow's melted, I could go to again and take a look, and if they need repainting, that's also something we can kind of address through these NTRs.
Yeah, they tend to repaint every spring. They try to do 2 rounds of painting every year. But yeah, by the spring, they're usually quite faded. So they should be coming back your way soon. And then somebody's just clarifying for that Taylor Street connection. They're not sure if it's at West Road or at Meadows Parkway, but there is something funny or unclear there, so.
Okay, might have to go drive it a few times.
Yeah, just to see how it feels, yeah. And then somebody's asking about, this may be outside your areas, but are there plans to create, and an ETA, a controlled intersection for the railroad crossing at West Road or Zimmerman? Not sure where the crossing is exactly. The horns are so loud for those living in the most east end of the Meadows. So I know there is a controlled crossing planned for the rail crossing by 8th Street, but I don't know of any other grade separation crossings planned on the east side. I mean, to get rid of the whistling, it doesn't have to be grade separated as long as there's the proper gates and things in place. I don't know for sure if there's any plans for that. We can make some inquiries. If we can find out more, we'll put it in the minutes. And I haven't heard anything for that crossing in particular. Think.
All right.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anything new quite yet. I'm hoping, let me just kind of go back and make sure I got them all. I think that's all the main ones there. Yeah, I think you can move on to next steps, Julian, and if more come in, I'll let you know.
Okay. Shaking my camera. A comment period will be open for a month beginning after this meeting and ending on May 29th. Once that comment period has come to an end, we'll finalize the traffic plan and prepare a report to present to the Standing Policy Committee on Transportation. The 4th stage is the implementation of the traffic plan, which includes the preparation of plans and installation of the recommendations. Signage, pavement markings, and temporary traffic calming measures are typically installed within a year after presenting the report. Traffic calming measures will be installed temporarily for a minimum of 1 year. The evaluation stage includes the follow-up assessments to determine the effectiveness of the temporary traffic calming measures. Traffic calming measures that are deemed effective will be scheduled for permanent installation as funding allows. Traffic calming measures that are deemed non-effective will either be modified or removed. This stage is dependent on stage 4 and will be scheduled to begin 1 year after the temporary traffic calming measures are installed so that we can ascertain the effectiveness of the measures in all seasons. So please feel free to reach out to us if you can think of any additional concerns. We'll post the meeting materials and a recording of the meeting, and we encourage you to share the information with your neighbors so that they also have an opportunity to participate. As mentioned earlier, we have multiple methods for submitting comments. You can post comments on the saskatoon.ca/engage page, subscribe for updates at saskatoon.ca/NTR, use the Report a Traffic Issue app. You can phone me at 306-975-3663, or email us at ntr@saskatoon.ca. You can send us a letter or fill out the online survey. More details on all these emails and phone numbers you can find at the saskatoon.ca/engage page. And I believe we'll have some links to post in the chat for you as well. If we were unable to get to your comment tonight, we'll provide a response in the meeting minutes, which will be posted to the saskatoon.ca/engage page. The meeting recording will also be posted to the engage page in the next few days. We'd also like to get your opinion on how the online meeting went tonight. Please let us know by filling out the online survey, and we'll also be posting a link to that in the Q&A forum for you. Before we kind of close things off, Natalie, did anything new come in?
Nothing new came in. I did post a link to the online survey in the chat and the engage page. So hopefully people can pull off those links before they sign off. And we really would appreciate your feedback for the online survey. We're always kind of assessing how best we can roll out these meetings, and it's been a huge change for us doing these online where we can't interact with you and see your faces. So any feedback on how we can do this better, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much to everyone for attending tonight. The more of your feedback we get, the better we can address your concerns. We couldn't develop these traffic plans without your input, so we really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening tonight to spend your time with us to give us your thoughts and opinions. I know it's a nice evening, and we're really glad that you could make it. So on behalf of Mayor Neal, Julian, and I, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night, and if you've subscribed for updates at the on the Engage page, there's a link you can subscribe for updates. Then we'll email you when the report is being presented to the Standing Policy Committee on Transportation. So thanks everyone so much for attending. Have a great night, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you. Take care.